What's going on, guys? This is Juan with Greener Grounds Lawn Service, and today's video, the topic is very simple. It's merely to share the story of how I went from having a full-time 9 to 5 job to starting this business, slowly scaling it as a part-time to the point where I made the jump and made my business my full-time employment, if you want to call it that, or just my full-time job, if you will. Um, and for the last 8 months, starting this month of May, depending on when you're watching this, it's currently May 2024, and I'm currently 8 months into business full-time. And it's been an incredible roller coaster ride. Lots of ups. There have been some downs, but I'm gonna give you a clean, transparent slate. Share the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully this can inspire somebody to, make that leap of faith. My initial video, my very first YouTube video in this channel, where I explained leaving my 9 to 5 job and going full time into business, was recorded in January, and that was recorded in a time when business was a little slow. So the more in-depth, detailed video that this is going to be may shed a different light, because I've now seen on the other side of the tunnel. Whereas January, February seemed a little bleak, we are now in May, and business has picked up again, and things are going stronger than ever. So I want to provide as many details as possible. Obviously, I'm only going to share so much, because if I were to share the whole story, I don't want to bore the heck out of you. So I do want to let you guys know I do have a Patreon, which I started a couple of weeks ago. I don't really have any content on there yet, but I am going to start posting on there additional things. Things that I plan on putting on there is examples of my estimates to land the bigger jobs and things like that. So if you are interested in additional content that I either can't post on YouTube, or I just want it specifically for some people that might find true value in it, the Patreon memberships are at an extremely affordable cost. It's basically the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I think you guys can really benefit from some of the information that I'm going to be sharing on there. And once I see that some people start joining, that's the exact moment that I will be starting to post on there. I already have a lot of content to be ready to post on there. Anyway, let's get to the story. So it's January of 2023, and the new year has just turned, and I'm thinking to myself, is my current 9 to 5 what I want to essentially continue to develop? For those of you who haven't seen my previous videos, I used to be a full-time videographer, and I used to record, edit, and create content for a luggage company, which I will not name. But I would create the storyboards, I would record it, I would edit it, and my tenure there was very good. I learned a lot. I definitely appreciate my time in that company, but I didn't see it as a fulfilling future. I kind of felt like I had reached a ceiling there, as in that industry, the only way to really grow up within that industry and develop is by being presented with bigger opportunities. And sometimes within companies, these bigger opportunities pop up as the company grows. But with certain leadership, not my direct leader, but senior leadership, when they create that ceiling, it's difficult to overcome that. So there was a point in time where I did seek outside employment, and but this particular January, to just get back into the story, I don't want to talk about uh, my whole time in that company. I want to talk about how I started this business, how I managed to juggle the full time and the part time, and eventually make my business my full time employment or job or dedication, however you want to call it. So I saw myself stagnant, and my time at my full time job, where I was employed as a videographer, it was becoming a little toxic. So I didn't see me being there for too much longer, and I wanted to find somewhat of an alternative, something that was just completely off left field that I never thought that I would be doing. Um, I had tried reselling in the past, and while it was successful, and it's something that I strongly considered because I was good at it, it's basically retail arbitrage. If you guys have never heard of it, I recommend you watching some YouTube videos. There is a ton of content out there. But essentially, what I would do is go to stores like Ross, Burlington, Marshalls, find things for X amount, do research online, and resell them online for margins, like for good, decent profit margins. But anyway, I thought about going back into that, but at the time being, um, my family and I, we had recently purchased a house, and we didn't really have space to start storing all of these items for me to resell. So I needed something that wasn't going to take up a whole lot of space, something that wasn't going to cost an arm and a leg to start a business. Because a lot of people think, I want to start a business, and think they need tens of thousands of dollars in order to start a business and be successful, and have it be your mainstream of income. That's not always the case. And doing some internet researches, I kept seeing like side hustles to start in 2023 that are like a low upfront cost to start and stuff like that. And as Big Brother is always watching, Facebook is always collecting data, Google is collecting data. From these searches, I started being pushed YouTube content related to these subjects. And I came across a Keith Kalfas video. If you're watching this video, more than likely you've seen Keith Kalfas. You've seen Brian's lawn maintenance or Brian's lawn service videos, because they are like the top dogs, as well as Tigran Gertz. I'm sorry. These are like the top dogs in the lawn care business as far as video creation and content creation goes. Also, shoot, I forgot his name. He's based in Georgia. He's got a huge franchised company. Shoot, I'm forgetting his name at the moment. But anyway, I came across Keith Kalfas, and he was in Home Depot talking about the day he decided to quit being an employee and become the employer, or become his own boss. He was working for a lawn care company, and he was up to the neck in debt, about to be evicted, without seeing a way out, until he decided, you know what, I'm doing my own thing. And watching that particular video, which I'm going to find and link to the description below, I want you guys to see that video if you're considering jumping into lawn care and you're afraid to do so, or want to see another perspective of somebody who was in a more difficult situation than I was. Because I had a good job. I had a job that, for somebody that had 1 year experience in the industry, I was making 65K a year. And it's nothing to laugh at. I'm sure there's a lot of people that started their own lawn care businesses and walked away from jobs that they were making a lot more. But that's just to show you, in the lawn care business, there is a lot of money to be made. And there's so many houses, so much work out there that even the dozens and hundreds of small lawn care companies, not everybody can get to all of those jobs. So there's always the need for a new business to pop up and be able to provide services to all these other homes. So when I saw that Keith Kalfa's video, I was automatically inspired, and I decided right there and then, I'm not going to search what other businesses I can start up. This is the business that I'm going to try. And I got to it. I immediately started brainstorming names for businesses. Now, something that I want you guys to consider if you're thinking of jumping into the lawn care business, don't make it such a personal name based on your name. So like if you want to go with initials or something like that, that's fine. But for example, my name is Juan, and if I were to name my business Juan's Lawn Care Services, if I ever think of selling my business, that is not such a marketable name, and it might be a lot less appealing to sell Juan's Lawn Care Business or Juan's Lawn Care Services, versus the actual name of my company, which is Greener Grounds Lawn Service, is a far more marketable name. It's a brand name instead of a personal name that, if I sell it to a guy named Bob and he is showing up to your doorstep saying, "Hey, I'm Bob with Juan's Lawn Care Services," the homeowner might be a little confused. But anyway, I digress. I started thinking of a creative name that I could name my business. So I came up with a list of 5 names, I think. And obviously I was searching on the internet to make sure that business name was not registered in my state, to make sure that it was a name that I could register and make it my entity. I narrowed down to 3 and ultimately ended up picking Greener Grounds Lawn Service. I started doing all the back-end administrative stuff. I started researching what are all of the different sort of services that can be offered under the umbrella of lawn care services. And there is so many things, so many different services, from resodding, remulching, aeration, dethatching, reseeding, lawn painting for those that live in the northern states where the grasses may go dormant and people may want to keep their lawn looking green, so they want their grass painted so that it remains green throughout the season. So many more things, actual landscaping, like rock installation, design, all that stuff. There was just so many things that can be offered under the umbrella of lawn care services that at the very beginning I was like, oh my God, I can offer 50 services. And eventually, if I get called up for one of those services, I'll just do a ton of research before going out to do the job to make sure that I'm doing a good job when I actually show up to the property. And then I got to creating a website. Obviously, I was also doing research on pricing, because something that you want to do is figure out pricing. Now, I have a whole video dedicated to pricing and what I learned about trying to price items out. So if you want, check that video out. I go into detail as to how I came about pricing my stuff, and ultimately what I think the best thing you can do for pricing is. But you can check that out in that other video. I don't want to digress too much from the story. So you got to figure out your pricing. I started creating a website, which was the first time I was creating a website. I went on GoDaddy.com, registered the domain name, paid for the hosting. I was all in. I had tried a lot of things in the past. I tried pyramid schemes, um, but I never followed through because I didn't have that conviction. I didn't have that true belief that it was a business I could succeed in. This was different though. I don't know if it was because I'm in a different mind state. My maturity level was different because I had a daughter to provide for and the desire to be able to leave her something in the future, to be able to say, I'm making X amount of money and I can actually put money aside to pay for my daughter's college, which is something that living paycheck to paycheck on salary, I could work 90 hours, 100 hours, and still get paid the same amount of money, no matter how hard I pushed, no matter how hard I worked, and not be compensated for it. Whereas if I was working under my own capabilities, I basically get out based on how much I put in. And this is the reason why I was fully convicted and dedicated into making this work. Still, I'm saying this, but I was still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Let me explain. I didn't want to jump in, and I couldn't jump in all at once because I didn't have the money to buy good machines, good equipment to make my life easier to start, because this was an experiment. But it was an experiment that from day one, I wanted to be as professional as possible on the administrative side so that they could see that I was an organized company, have professional invoices. That's something I did. I researched what is the best free CRM or client, what does it stand for? CRM, client, shoot, I forgot, but it's basically the software where I do all of my scheduling. I send invoices, I send estimates. People can pay online using the online portal within that software. And I also have a completely separate video on that, detailing what software that is, the research that I did, and why I think it's the best entry point software for you and your business. So I had all of the administrative things in order, organized, ready to roll. I printed out business cards. I took out a Google number so that I could distinguish personal from business phone calls. And I think it was the end of January, my friend's mom contacts me out of the blue. She has no inclination to think I have started this business, because at this point in time, the only people that know that I'm starting this business is my fiance, her family, and my family. Nobody else knew. I didn't tell any of my friends because I prefer to keep things that way until I'm ready to say, you know what, hey, I started this business, spread the word. And my friend's mom hits me up out of nowhere. Hey, do you happen to know somebody that, a reliable lawn care company? And I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is a sign. So I told her, you know what? It just so happens that I just started my business. When do you need me to start? I'll give you the friends and family discount. And I was there within a week, mowing that first lawn. But what happened during that week leading up to when I was going to go mow? I didn't have any equipment. I had all of the administrative stuff, didn't have any equipment. So I started researching on Facebook Marketplace for things, for equipment. But as I mentioned, I didn't have the money to be able to get either gas powered equipment. And I know that people are going to say, yeah, on Facebook Marketplace, you can find it for 50, 60 bucks. However, I didn't have a pickup truck like I do now, and where I can store my equipment in the back. I was driving a what's it called? A Subaru Outback. So yeah, well, I had a spacious trunk, and I could put the seats in the back down. It was still a family car where I would often transport my daughter in. So I didn't want the fumes of gasoline to be within this car. So I knew from the get-go I didn't want to use gasoline for my equipment. And so there was two other options. It was either get battery-powered electric equipment, which the cost of batteries is pretty expensive. So I didn't want to go that route. So I went with the cheapest possible route, which is getting electric corded equipment, meaning I needed to get an extension cord that was at least 100 feet. But I actually got one of those things that is sort of like a circle that you can plug in, and it has an extension cord attached to it as well. So I had 125 feet worth of electric cord that I could plug in and be able to cover the property. Let me tell you, it is a nightmare to start your business with corded equipment. It is an absolute nightmare because the equipment might have sort of like a little safe so that the cord doesn't get unplugged. But let me tell you, it's a good theory that doesn't work. That little hook, in order for the cord to kind of have a little bit of play so that it doesn't get pulled off, does not work. During that first mow, it was about a 7,500 square foot lot, and it had a lot of things that I had to mow around. In that house, they have her granddaughter lived in that house, and there was toys all over the backyard. They had pool chairs that needed to be moved, so it wasn't an easy feat. And the lawnmower that I ended up going with was a 13-inch Ryobi mower. Again, this is corded, as well as a corded blower and a corded weed whacker. So having to unplug from one plug to the next, and just basically walking all the way to the extension to replug it in whenever it got unplugged. This house took me 2.5 hours. Guys, 2.5 hours is a long time to be mowing a house, especially when you charged $35 for it, because it was my first time pricing. And even though I did all this research in pricing, you have a certain shyness to ask for more money for something that you've never really done professionally or amateur. Because before starting this business, I had mowed my parents' house maybe once or twice as a teenager, which was a long time ago. So just the fact that I was charging $35 for somebody to have me come out and cut their grass was sort of an accomplishment or a feat, because I knew that just like they agreed to pay me $35, there was going to be houses that it wouldn't take me 2.5 hours, and I could also charge $35. But that's also a mindset that you want to understand. It's just the beginning, and with time, you're going to gain confidence, and you're going to be able to sell jobs easier. You're going to be able to sell your business or your services at a price that is more worthy of your time, at a better price point. But it was just something that I struggled with for quite a few months. And even to this day, I feel like sometimes I am undervaluing the jobs that I am quoting. But it's part of what's called growing pains. You're learning, you're growing as a business, and there's going to be a lot of times where you are, getting underpaid for the services that you are rendering. So after that first mow, I was super excited because it was my first transaction. And then I was super excited to tell my boss and my coworker at work. They knew that, I was trying to make at least a little bit of side money. The extent of it that they knew was that, I started this side hustle to just make money, maybe mowing lawns on the weekends and after work, stuff like that. And being January, it was a very slow growth. I think by the time I landed a second client, it was probably 3 or 4 weeks since starting with that first client. And let me tell you about a couple of the apps that I was using to find clients or find leads for potential clients. And one of the apps that I still use to this day, which is called GreenPal. Now, I have a couple of videos as to the ups and downs, or the good and the bad of these apps for bidding. But yeah, GreenPal was definitely a facilitator in helping me gain new clients. But since I was working with corded equipment at the very beginning, I lost a few jobs because I was always having to ask, like, to portray myself as having a bigger company with more professional equipment. When I got hired by these clients, I was having to feed them the story like, oh, hey, I saw that you just hired me for this job for tomorrow or for this weekend. My regular mower is at the shop getting repaired, so at the moment I only have a corded mower. Do you have an electrical outlet on the outside so that I can plug into? I have an extension cord so I can get to it all to mow the property. And I lost a couple of people like that because I guess they saw it as unprofessional, and I don't blame them. I didn't have a whole lot of experience under my belt. I didn't have a whole lot of pictures to show my work. So they kind of said, I'm not sure that this is going to work out, and ultimately just go and hire somebody else. Which, again, it's part of the growing pains. You're going to go through a lot of no's before you get to the yeses. And if you find yourself receiving a lot of yeses and not a whole lot of no's, that's also an indicator that not that you're a good salesman, because that very might well be the case. You might be the best salesman and closing 90 or 100% of your leads, but at the same time, are you leaving money on the table? If they're willing to say yes so quickly without saying, if you're speaking to the husband, oh, let me speak to my wife and get back to you, or let me speak to my husband and let me get back to you, it's likely that they've had other people quote them, and you've come so far under what those people have quoted that they're willing to say yes on the spot. So that's something to keep in mind. At the very beginning, you are going to leave money on the table, I guarantee it. But you'll eventually learn with time, practice, and experience. Now, as I started getting more and more customers, I started seeing my family time go down. So I started losing that balance because now my weekends were dedicated to working. Since I still had these corded machines that I needed to plug in, my workflow was relatively slower than it could be, and therefore by the time I had like 4 or 5 clients that I was visiting every other week, I would be spending like 5 hours either on Saturday or on Sunday to be servicing these customers, and that was not practical whatsoever. So as I became busier and busier, now getting to like 6 to 8 to 10 clients, I started seeing that only working on weekends was ultimately going to completely remove my family time, and I didn't want that. So what I started doing was I started scheduling some of these cuts as early as like 7 or 7:30 a.m. On properties that would allow me to be there that early if there was no HOA, so that I could go and mow a lawn before work. So my whole morning would be, I leave the house like at 6:30 to get to my property by like 7 and be all set up. Mow, be done around 8ish, 8:15ish. By the time that I was doing this, by the way, I had already upgraded to our Ryobi battery powered machine, as well as um, a battery powered weed whacker and blower. So I was a little bit more efficient. I was able to reduce my cut time from an hour 30 to 2 hours on average to about an hour or 45 minutes on some cases. So I was able to go and cut lawns prior to having to go into the office. So I would go cut a lawn, bring some deodorant with me, bring a change of clothes, and on my way to the office, change in the car from when I was driving in the street between red lights. I would take off my shirt, put on my clean shirt after blasting the AC to make sure that I dried up as much as possible, put on deodorant. In the middle of driving, take off, well, not in the middle of driving, but like at a red light, take off my shoes, take off my pants, switch to just clean clothes in order for me to show up to the office, and be at the office by 9, do my thing. I continued to grow thanks to this app of GreenPal, and people actually finding my website. And I started developing like a little nook of customers near where I worked. So what I was able to do is switch back to the clothes from the morning that were already wet from having worked that morning, and putting that back on, go out during lunch, and instead of going out to spend the hour eating, I would go mow a lawn, then blast the AC on the highest possible setting, and just dry up, go pick up McDonald's, and as soon as I got to the office, put my clean clothes back on in the parking lot, bring my lunch down. And I did have the ability to eat at work, so I would just eat while I was in the office, multitasking and working. And I did that. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but it was at least at this time, which was maybe April or May of 2023, that I had maybe 12 customers, give or take. It was about 3 times a week that I was having to go do a mow during lunch. And then as I got busier, June, July, I was having to do a mow before work, during lunch, and after work, on top of working weekends. Now, obviously, since I started doing this Monday through Friday, morning, lunch, and after work, what I started doing was reduce my workload on the weekends while still having to do work, in order to be able to spend a little bit more family time. So instead of working the whole day on Saturday and Sunday, I would probably work until like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. But more calls started coming in, more clients coming in, and on top of that, it wasn't just mowing. I started getting customers for bigger landscaping jobs. My first job that was not mowing a lawn was to rid this front yard of weeds and replace it with just decorative rock. That was my first non-lawn mowing job. If I remember correctly, they paid me like $200, which was just the labor, and it took me a collective maybe 4 hours, give or take. And I was like, holy crap, I got paid $150 to work for 4 hours. Mind you, in the office, yes, I was salary, but if I averaged out how much I was making per day at the office after taxes, I was making like $200 a day. So $200 for like 8 hours versus this $150 that I made on my own working for about 4 hours. It was incredible. That just gave me another push in my gears. I was like, you know what? This is gonna work after all. And I just kept going, going, going. The second biggest job I landed in April, thanks to having my website. A couple that was moving from outside of the state searched up maybe landscaping in Deerfield Beach, which is where we're based out of. Landscaping in Deerfield Beach. And they came across my company. They saw a professional website with a contact form. So they input all of the information in the contact form, and I was able to land that job. It was a fairly big job. I actually created a video dedicated on how I landed this job, and there's actually a short in my YouTube channel about how I actually could have lost money on this job and how I left a lot of money on the table in this particular job. Let me tell you just the spiel. I charged $2,500. We removed roughly about 9,000 pounds of yard debris. And luckily, because this customer, their cousin owned a bulk removal company, all that bulk removal was basically comped. I didn't have to pay a dime to get any of that removed. Otherwise, I would have been in the negative for this particular job. And I harshly underestimated how much labor was going to go into doing this particular job, because I was so inexperienced in a job like this, and I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what I needed to be estimating, how much debris was going to be pulled out, and ultimately a job that, with a crew of, call it 4 people, I should have been able to finish the job in 2 or 3 days time, because it was a lot. It took me about a month, and I was extremely lucky to have a customer that was that patient and understanding, because they also saw how many unexpected things there were when we started cleaning out their backyard. I highly recommend you go see that short so you can see what it was like before. The short doesn't do it justice as to how much work really went into it, because the short is like 30 seconds long, but that's time lapses sped up 10 or 20 times just to make it short length. But yeah, that was quite the experience. What I was doing is, instead of mowing every day after work, I was going and dedicating 2 hours every single day for about 3 weeks, plus working on weekends over there whenever the HOA would allow it, to be able to get this job done. And ultimately, it was all done. They did hire me for a second job, which was planting some 15-gallon bougainvilleas and some Charlie Brown trees. So I was able to make a little bit of extra money, or get a little bit closer to breaking even in that job. It's all part of the growing pains, but it's part of what needs to happen for you to grow as a business owner. You have to understand the failures before you can appreciate the success. So fast forwarding back again to June, July, I'm starting to see that, I'm consistently on a month-to-month basis landing jobs where I'm making an additional $1,000 plus. A few here and there that are a few $100, like $300, $400, $500, aside from my regular routine mowings. So I'm starting to realize, by working part-time in my business as it continues to grow, I'm dedicating maybe 15 to 25 hours, depending on the week or if we have any additional jobs. 15 to 25 hours per week, and I'm making about 80% of my salary at the office. Now, some of the higher ups, my boss's boss especially, she starts pulling me into meetings to see where my head is at. Asking me about long-term stuff and what I have planned as far as video shoots and all that stuff. Now, keep in mind, my work outside of the office was not being impacted at all. Never was I late in delivering any assignment. I never missed work because of my business. If I took time off, it was to spend it with family and stuff like that. But I never took off of the office in order for me to work on my business. So those two occupations were not overlapping at any point. So she started kind of questioning me and digging and putting an issue for me taking time off of work as soon as it became available. And again, I was taking this time to be with family, or if we were going out of state on vacation, because since I was working arguably 90 to 100 hours, not a week. If I was working like 50 to 60 hours a week, because I was doing both businesses, I was taking breaks here and there in order to be able to, spend time with the family. So she took notice in that, the fact that I was requesting time off as it became available. And I started noticing that she started outsourcing some work to freelance videographers. So this is around the July timeframe. And I started feeling some type of way, like, is my job at risk? Can I be fired without any warning? I had never been warned about my productivity. I had never been put in any sort of remedial plan or plan to kind of get me back on track or anything like that. Never. The conversation never even came up about me underperforming in any sort of way. But I still had those doubts that this lady was kind of feeding my head. And so with those doubts, I started thinking more and more like, how much longer am I going to be here? And what am I going to do? So I started focusing heavily on promoting my business even further, trying to put a word out to get more clients, land bigger jobs, more big jobs more frequently. And by the middle of August, I had decided. By the middle of August, I was making roughly 85% of my salary just based off of recurring customers. So not even counting for the bigger jobs, which I was landing consistently on a not day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis, at least one big job a month. So with that one big job, I was making a little bit over my monthly salary at the office. And so in the middle of August, I decided September is going to be my last month. And I told my boss. We always had open communication, so he always knew what was in my mind, what my plans were, stuff like that. And so I told him, hey, the end of September is going to be my going to be the end. I'm going to submit my 2 weeks notice in the middle of September. But I just want to let you know ahead of time, in case you want to start headhunting to find somebody to replace me, because I don't want to leave anybody high and dry, and just I don't want to leave any work on the table that was unfinished. So I make sure I finish all of my projects. And sure enough, September came and went, and I was free. The last day of September, I believe, was like the 29th, which was a Friday. So that weekend, I took off from any lawn care business, and Monday I was going to start fresh as my own boss, an entrepreneur, and I was going to be able to have full control of my time. So Monday came, and I was super happy, super ecstatic. I didn't have to go and report to anybody at a specific time. I think that first week, I finished working every single day around 2 p.m., which was absolutely incredible. I was able to schedule myself so I didn't have to work weekends at all. And in the last 8 months, I think I've worked maybe 2 or 3 weekend days, just because they were like bigger jobs. But other than that, I've been working Monday through Friday. And October came, November came, incredible months financially. In November, I almost doubled my salary that I was making in the office, which was absolutely unprecedented. And then December came. In December, since I had made almost double my salary in November, I didn't think too much of it, but I hadn't heard about any potential big jobs or anything like that. Just my routine lawn care. And then I started getting text messages from clients saying like, hey, it hasn't been raining. It's been a little cooler. The days are shorter. Let's cut back on. I had some customers that were getting mows every 10 days. They cut back to every 2 weeks. I had some that were every 2 weeks. Some of them cut back to every 3 weeks. And I started seeing like, okay, so I think for the month of December, I projected I was going to be making about 75% of my salary that I was making in the office. So since I had made more money in November, I was able to still pay all my bills, my mortgage, car payments, all that stuff, and be fine. January came around, same thing, except for December, I kind of went a little off the wire and bought a bunch of Christmas gifts since November and October had been so good. So January was a little bit tighter, and money that I had put aside to pay taxes, when I did my taxes, I had to dig into that savings. But still, nonetheless, I was able to pay my bills and do all of that. I did get maybe 1 or 2 jobs in January that brought in a couple extra $100. And then February came around, and I finally started getting more phone calls. People that are looking for a new service provider for the coming season, and some clients that had been putting off certain things until they did their taxes and that kind of stuff. So I started getting more calls. The frequency of the mowings started picking back up again. And we started getting a little bit of rain, but for some reason it was still a little bit cooler. It's been the coldest winter in Florida, not temperature-wise, but just in the amount of days that we've had cooler weather. And even right now, today is the 1st of May of 2024, and we have some evenings that are in the low 70s and some mornings that are also in the low 70s or high 60s. which is unprecedented. Right now, it should be beach weather every single day, any time of the day. And it's right now, at this current moment, we've been in a very drastic drought. We've had maybe 2 rain showers this week, but prior to this week, we haven't had any rain in like 3 or 4 weeks. So things are growing slowly. And again, I've been having to push back a couple visits because I like to do my work and I like my business to have integrity. So I'm not gonna go and completely burnt that grass or just mow grass that hasn't really grown any because of the lack of rain. It's not the way that I operate business. It's not the taste that I want to leave in my customers' mouths. So, okay, this guy's just gonna show up and charge me for basically trimming a 1/4 inch of the top. That's not what I want it to be. Now, I understand I have bills to pay and all that stuff, and I'm making sure they're taken care of. But yeah, it's been an amazing experience the last 8 months since I decided to go full time. Ups and downs. I actually filmed a long form video regarding this job that I actually finished a few weeks back. A job that was altogether gross, including cost of materials and stuff, about $6,700. And I go into detail as to what we did during that job, how much was materials, how much I ended up putting in my pocket, how much I paid labor, all that stuff. So if you want it, it's coming soon. Depending on when this video comes out, it might have already come out. So go and check out some of my older videos. Now, this is a very detailed video as to how I managed to deal with growing the business and still working full time. I'm happy to share information. I highly recommend you guys go check out Patreon, support a small channel. I want to share as much information as possible, and for the most part, I'm going to share all the information that I can on here, but things that I cannot share on here is, for example, a one-on-one conversation. With the Patreon, there's an exclusive membership where I have a WhatsApp group, and anybody that joins that membership will be added to that WhatsApp group in order for us to just have an ongoing conversation of entrepreneurs or lawpreneurs that are like-minded, and we can share what works for us, what doesn't work for us, marketing tactics, all that stuff, as well as show you guys maybe some behind-the-scene videos of working through my CRM, how that CRM works, best practices, those kind of things that are not really too compelling here on YouTube. But yeah, anyway, again, the Patreon link is going to be in the description below, as well as the Keith Kalfas video. If you've stuck around this long, thank you so much. It means the world to me. Hit that like button, subscribe. I have a ton of videos with information regarding my best practices when I started the business, what's working for me now, what was working for me then, and it may be informational and educational for your behalf and for your journey. So give me a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe to the channel. A lot more content is coming. Peace.